University of Rome, but also in the context of CIVIS Alliance, which is a pilot alliance funded by the European Commission of 8 universities, and that in particular today we have the participation of the RIS4CIVIS project, which is a project aimed at implementing the strategies of these research and innovation strategies of this alliance. So the central part of the meeting of the webinar will be devoted to an exchange of practices in the implementation of human resource strategies in a certain number of universities, European universities. So I thank the speakers for these opportunities to share with us these their respective experiences and practices in the implementation of the process. But we have also a keynote speech by the European Commission, a representative of European Commission, in particular Apostolia Karamali, Mrs. Apostolia Karamali, who is the head of research and innovation actors and research careers of the Directorate Research and Innovation of European Commission. And Mrs. Karamali will illustrate the state of the art of the process at the European level, and also will illustrate some perspective of the in the future of this process at the European level. So I will now give the floor to the speakers of the first session of the meeting, of the webinar. But before doing that, I wish to thank sincerely Laura Colò, Laura Brossico, Fausta Zurlo for Sapienza Universities, and also the president of UNICA, Luciano Saso, for this great opportunity to be part of this webinar. And of course, they represent all the speakers of the meeting. So I give now the floor to Antonella Cammisa, who is the director of the Research and Technology Transfer Division of Sapienza University of Rome. The division is also the area, the unit in which is committed with the implementation of the process within our university. And then Diana Pustula, who is head of International Research Office at University of Warsaw, and most of all in this context, also the chair of EURLO and UNICA working group, and Luciano Saso, who is a professor at Sapienza, but most of all vice director for UNICA Network and the CIVIS Alliance, and also to Céline Damon, who is the project manager of this project that I mentioned, RIS4CIVIS. So please, Antonella, you can start with your intervention. Thanks.
Thank you, Ciro. Welcome everybody. Thanks for UNICA for giving us the opportunity to both share our experiences on this program and process, and on the other side. Better? It's better?
Yes, now it's better. Thank you.
Okay. On the other side, also to have for us the opportunity to meet other people and other universities in this period that has been very isolated for us and somehow frustrating not to have the opportunity as before to have exchanges and yes, cooperation as before. So again, with UNICA Network, it's a network you know we are very involved in, and we are engaged since the starting date and the birth on one side, and the CIVIS Alliance also, that has been also very, very important in these years, and is giving us also many opportunities to share again experiences at all levels of the universities, because in fact the CIVIS Alliance is involving not only international offices but big share of offices and professors, and this has been nice from one side, but very hard from the other, because has been involved many people and also much time, I must say, or people of my office. So the human resource strategy and the process was pushed by the research offices in Sapienza together with international offices at the beginning, but the important aspect of the process for us was that it involved also many other offices and staff of the university, both at the administrative level and also as professors and people in charge of important tasks in our university. So I think that the process reached two main goals. From beside what will be in fact the objectives we could reach, is that from one side make the European process and policies known and spread at all levels of the universities or the university, even in those offices and people that were never before involved in international and European issues. And the involvement and the commitment was very, very high by everybody. On the other side, European issues were in fact a tool to improve, in fact, many of our internal also regulations. So it really paved the way to improve our internal rules and our also attitude towards new policies, new aspects of new ways of viewing and considering things. I must say that it also helped the internal, being a large university, and it also gave a hint toward considering researcher and career of researcher, not only from everywhere in the world, and so also considering intercultural issues and cooperation. I think that these were the most important aspects of the process. So I must thank, in fact, Ciro Franco, that was the real pusher, if I may say, of the process, and that has been very committed to this process and very convinced to make it happen, and giving much of his effort and time to this. So we are now we will see on the second phase of the process, and we are more and more people are involved in it. So I don't want to add anything, but I am very happy to have the occasion to know which are the other experiences in this process in other universities. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonella. And with the occasion, I'd like also to thank the Dottoressa Cammisa for her confidence in this process and in all the team of Sapienza working on this in the last 2 years on this issue. And in particular, I'd like to mention here once again Fausta Zurlo, who was really committed, and also Emanuele Genuso, who is the head of the grant office of Sapienza, is part also of this division, research and technology transfer division of Sapienza. So I give now the floor to Diana Pustula. Thanks.
Thank you, Ciro. I hope you can hear me. Good morning. I would like to welcome you very warmly on behalf of the EU Research Liaison Officers Group at today's webinar, especially our pool of experts who kindly accepted our invitation. As you may know, our group focuses on issues related to EU research policies, programs, and funding, and serves as a platform for exchange of information, good practices, and solutions to overcome common difficulties resulting from the complex EU research funding rules and schemes. And today the question would be to me, why is the HR strategy for researchers important for the research institutions? Is it a mere compliance measure of the EU research and innovation framework programs? Or maybe it's part of the internationalization strategy of the institution, or an important part of the overall development strategy of an institution? Well, let's see. Shall we, Ciro?
Thanks, Diana. Now Luciano Saso, the president of UNICA, and the one who gave us this opportunity.
So good morning to everyone. A very warm welcome from me as well. I'm Luciano Saso, as Ciro said, president of UNICA. I'm really happy about this event because the topic is really very important. Human, resources strategies at UNICA universities in cooperation with the CIVIS. I have to say that it's very important for UNICA to cooperate with other alliances which have been recently created, and in particular CIVIS is an alliance which is very much UNICA flavored, I have to say, because we have 6 UNICA members there, so it's really a great pleasure to have this cooperation. We organized already some other events before with the CIVIS, but also with other alliances such as Utopia, and we are planning other events in cooperation with European university alliances. UNICA at the moment has 55 universities, and 35 UNICA members have been successful already in this important project of European Union, which is changing the higher education landscape and also the research landscape. So this has been really a very important and very relevant idea. I want to thank also my own university, in this case, Sapienza University, for having promoted this event. Thank you, Ciro and Antonella and Fausta, for having worked so hard for this event in cooperation with the UNICA Secretariat, the 2 Lauras and others. I also want to thank very much Diana Pustula because this event is under the umbrella of an important working group of UNICA, the EU Research Officers and the UNICA Research Working Group, which has been very active for many years in UNICA, organizing very important events, preparing policy papers and other, very practical and pragmatic also, approaches which helped, I think, UNICA members to implement research strategies. And I have to say that recently we've been even more active with several events related to research. In fall, we had a very important event organized together with Cesar on the opportunities to fund interdisciplinary research. We know that we all aim at having more interdisciplinary projects, but sometimes it's not easy to find the proper financial tools to do that. And that that event, which is recorded and available on the UNICA website, I think was an important step forward to help university in that direction. We also had more recently another event promoted by the University of Ljubljana, again on interdisciplinary research, which is a topic very close to our heart. And just a few, I would say, weeks ago, an important event in April on the relationship between academia and industry, models for entrepreneurship at UNICA universities. I think that also was a very useful and pragmatic event. So I want to thank all the distinguished speakers. First of all, of course, Apostolia Karamali, the head of unit at European Commission, Ivanka Popovic, Rector of University of Belgrade. If I may say, Ivanka, since this is the first time we meet after the important election of yourself as a member of the board of EUA, so congratulations again. This is very prestigious for you, but we are also very happy at UNICA to have rectors engaged in the board, of course, of EUA. And then all the other distinguished speakers that we have from Université Libre de Bruxelles, University of Tübingen, and Autónoma de Madrid. So I think this is really a very interesting panel. I'm looking forward to listening to all of you, and thank you again to the organizers, Ciro and Laura and many others. Thanks a lot.
Okay, then I would give the floor now to Mrs. Apostolia Karamali for the keynote speech from the European Commission. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody, and I'm very pleased to be with you today, and very energized by all these welcoming speeches and all this high-level participation around me. So thank you very much. I'm very honored for this invitation. We have prepared some slides, which I believe Michele will project.
Sorry, Apostolia, sorry for interrupting you.
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting you. I missed Céline. I'm very sorry because I was chatting with her about her intervention, so I gave you the floor. Sorry for that.
No problem.
Please, Céline. Céline, we cannot hear you. Céline?
Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sorry, excuse me. So I was just saying, Apostolia will be very short like this because I'm sure that everyone will be delighted to listen to you. Thanks to all of you to have invited me. I am not member of UNICA, but I represent the Civis Alliance. And as it has been said until now, these European alliances are new objects, but were very important and very also structuring for the European research area. So Civis is an alliance of 9 universities. Lots of these universities are members of UNICA, so I won't go into details, and all the universities will detail their own HRS4R strategy. What I wanted to emphasize is that even if our alliance as such doesn't employ researchers, so is not normally dedicated really to the HRS4R. It's something, and the human resources strategy, it's really at the core of what we want to build all together. And thanks to this Horizon 2020 pilot project called Risk for Civis that Ciro explained, we chose to put the HR questions, so the HR transformational models, at the center of what we want to realize within Civis and within Risk for Civis. So to give a brief overview of Civis, amongst all the 9 universities, 3 are in the process of working on the HRS4R. All the others got the label already. My university was the last one. We just got the confirmation last year, and I must confess that without Civis and without the coordination of the alliance, it would have been much more difficult to make the board decide to really engage in this label. So it was really a fostering effect of the alliance, and I think a very positive also outcomes. For Risk for Civis as such, as I said, that we have a dedicated models for HR questions, and we really aim at working together like the other alliances to do this benchmark where we stand, what are our strengths, what are the legal barriers, and also to try to commonly work on a common strategy for HR. And we particularly focus on 4 hot topics for our universities, which are the questions of the recruitment, so the famous OTMR plans for recruitment, Of course, the question of mobility and the mobility of researchers, because you all know that these alliances, it's the core of the spirit of these alliances to make the students, but also the researchers be able to go in other universities. We have a peculiar attention as well to the training and continuous development, and we are seeing what we can do together, what we can share together, and what are the needed tools as well to strengthen this training, the researchers' training, and of course the working conditions and how we can make our alliance and our university more attractive, also through working conditions. So all of these are the topics on what we are currently working. As I said, we are doing a benchmark. We will decide together as well and to do proposals at the CIVIS board, and also to show to the European conclusion what are our conclusions on this, to try to strengthen our collaborations and also on the HR perspective. And very concretely, because we also try to put lots of concrete actions in CIVIS for the researchers, we are, for example, launching now actions concerning mobility. So we try to foster mobility of our postdoc and to go for the postdoc calls for proposal in Horizon Europe. So we are training our postdoc. We are trying to also identify host postdocs and host institutions so that we can ease the mobility of our postdoc within our alliance. And we just got also the confirmation a few months ago that we got our a new project within CIVIS, which is a co-funded project also for mobility. It's a postdoc co-fund. It's called CIVIS 3i. So it's among 4 of the 9 universities. The other universities are also partners, and we will really experiment as well concrete actions to make our to offer posts, to offer training, to host and to host postdoc amongst us, and to concretely try to work more in common and to define procedures and common tools as well, and also common, of course, training for the postdoc. So this is the first step of experimentation, and we all together with all the universities, we are trying really to see how all these European programs, but also the national initiatives and the initiatives of every university can be seen as a motor for the others as well to progress and to commonly go for better and to try to higher the level of all our HR procedures within our universities. And I think I will give I will let back the floor to Apostolia. Sorry, Apostolia.
Thank you very much, Céline, and sorry again, but we really wanted strongly to have Céline as a project manager of this project within this panel, because we really believe that CIVIS Alliance is also, and in particular Risk for CIVIS project, is a good opportunity for a further exchange of experience and to learn one from each other, from our respective experience in terms of implementation of human resource strategy. Now let's move further. Sorry again, Apostolia, for interrupting you, and I give you now the floor again.
Thank you. And I have to say, it's been a pleasure for me to listen to Céline's intervention, because this is the kind of links that we want to see happening actually through the European universities projects, and also bringing added value to the human resources strategy process. So actually, I think what Céline referred to is extremely relevant to this discussion today. So I was saying before that we have prepared a presentation, and I think Michele will be projecting this presentation. So what I will be sharing with you today is a few words on the state of play with the human resources strategy for researchers, where we stand today, why we have this process, and then I will focus my presentation also on the future perspectives in the context of the new European research area. So we can go directly to the next slide, Michele. a bit of history. As you know, last year we celebrated 20 years of the European Research Area, and it has been a long journey, actually. And here you see a little bit of a recapping of this journey of those 20 years celebrated under the Croatian presidency, also with the presence of Commissioner Busquin. So we had a first period of until 27, so between 2000 and 2007, where there was discussion about the need to join forces between European and national level. And it is at that time that actually the European Charter for Researchers and the Code of Conduct for the Recruitment of Researchers was conceived and was adopted as a Commission recommendation at the time. And we also had several other initiatives, EURAccess as well, and without having, let's say, the formal competence in the treaty. And then we went to phase 2, if we work in clockwise. So you see in phase 2, so as of 2007, let's say, with the start of the discussions on the new treaty, which is currently in force, and the introduction of ERA as a competence in the treaty with Article 179. And this gave birth to a process between the European and national level on the implementation of ERA, with national action plans that are analyzed and discussed at European level with the European Research Area Committee at the Council, providing the forum to exchange on all this on a number of structured priorities, including a dedicated priority on the open labor market for researchers. And then, of course, this after let's say, the entry into force of the treaty and all this very important process for the European Research Area, where we are now up until last year, we were in a recurrent process of trying to implement and supervise these objectives and actions for ERA, which included the Charter and Code and its implementing mechanism of the human resources strategy for researchers. And I will come back in the second part of my presentation on the next step. So if we can go to the next slide. So the Charter and Code, as I was saying before, was adopted in 2005 as a Commission recommendation. It includes, as you know, a number of principles and values relevant to researchers and to the recruitment of researchers. And it was immediately obvious that we needed a process to actually implement that, help institutions put that in place. And that's why this human resources strategy for researchers was started, which allows this process. So this started already in 2008 as a mechanism to facilitate the implementation of the Charter and Code. Then already in 2014 with Horizon 2020, we included some incentives also for the framework program with Article 32 of the Model Grant Agreement. And then as of 2017, we started inserting checklists and to the self-assessment process. And finally, as of 2018, we also have a portal, so a digitized process, fully digitized, with a portal dedicated to that and hopefully facilitating the exchanges and the implementation. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So let's briefly recall, I know that you're experts in all this, but let's briefly recall what the Charter and Code was about. So it has 4 important pillars: working conditions, recruitment, career development, and ethics. And then for each of those pillars, it includes a number of principles in order to underpin these pillars, which are very important in research careers in general. Next slide, please. So let's have a look at what the HRS4R process looks today. First of all, I want to underline it is purely voluntary process. So it is on the demand of research institutions. It provides an accompanying process, an accompanying service to the institutions requiring this support, and it is peer review based, and actually it should be seen as a mechanism to facilitate the development of action plans. It has today the phases that you see here. So there is an initial phase, an implementation phase, and an award renewal phase. In the initial phase, which takes approximately a year, it starts with the endorsement of the Charter and Code by the institution, and on a voluntary base, the institutions can also ask to be peer reviewed in view of developing action plans for human resources. And this, of course, takes time. And this is what you were referring to in your initial statements. Once these action plans are in place and on the basis of a positive peer review, there is an award of HR excellence. Then we go into the implementation phase, which takes approximately 5 years. And during that phase, of course, we offer again services of peer review to actually fine-tune the action plan and support the implementation. And finally, we foresee today also the award renewal phase after this 5-year period. So as you can see, this is a very long process because anyhow, human resources strategies are part and parcel of any governance of any institution, higher education institutions, but not only. So therefore, it has to be a sustainable process. So hence the nature of this process as seen in this slide here. Then we have 2 slides with some statistics on the HRS4R across Europe. So you can see here on the left-hand side that there has been an exponential increase of the number of institutions requesting to be peer reviewed for human resources strategies. And you can see in particular the number of assessment in the last years, 2019 and 2020, which included also site visits, virtual, of course, under the pandemic. But you see over 240 assessments performed in 2019 and just under 200 in 2020, despite the pandemic. Overall, there are almost more than 1,200 institutions who have endorsed the Charter and Code, some 600 who have the award. You have the specific statistics, of course, for 19 and 20, and also just roughly 200 are currently in the award phase or seeking renewal. So you see there is some, let's say, there is a lot of interest, and many institutions have adhered to this process. And in the next slide, which you can consult at your ease, you can see the more detailed statistics per country with respect to the awarded organizations. Then let me go to the next 2 slides, which are the benefits. So why do we have this HRS4R process? I mentioned at the beginning, this is purely voluntary, and it is a process which was created in order to implement the Charter and Code, to facilitate the implementation of the Charter and Code to those institutions that voluntarily ask for it. So the first benefit reported is, of course, the process itself. Many institutions have been engaged say that the actual fact of thinking about the action plans, which chapters, how to address human resources strategy, this actual fact is very, very beneficial. The second group of benefits is linked to the internationalization, and you mentioned it yourself. It's about opening beyond the institution itself, opening to other countries or beyond member states, and understanding best practices and seeing how this can be also adopted by a given institution. Then, of course, a very important benefit is linked to the researchers themselves, who should be at the center of the attention of the human resources strategy, of course. So putting them at the core of the process, engaging with the human capital, and therefore increasing their motivation and engagement, creating favorable conditions for their career development, promoting equal opportunities, and of course, helping them with their work-life balance. If we can continue with the next slide, additional benefits, of course, include the visibility and the attractiveness of the institutions having such a human resources strategy. Of course, this process is not compulsory. It is not a standard to recognize. So this is something we can look at in the future. At the same time, it is a visible process, and institutions that have the award and have taken the effort to actually improve the human resources strategy, not only through an action plan, but through a continuous effort of fine-tuning this action plan and the processes that they have in place. This is, of course, visible to other institutions, but especially to people and researchers, and therefore it is a factor of attraction and mobility for attracting talent in general. And finally, another benefit is, of course, linked to funding conditions, certainly from the European perspective through the framework program, but also it is embedded in other national conditions. So this is the situation as of today. And let us now have a look about to glimpse towards the future. As you know very well, last year has been extremely rich in terms of institutional exchanges at European and national level. And after having celebrated 20 years of ERA, there were a lot of political discussions about revitalizing the European research area and rethinking about its priorities and actions. And therefore, the Commission adopted a package of centered around knowledge, so a new European research area in September, together with proposals for education on the European education area and the digital education action plan. And to this, we have to add the skills agenda, which was adopted in July, addressing the skills needs to the different levels of education, but also in terms of lifelong learning and professional development more broadly, and what can be done there. So there was a whole package from the Commission oriented towards knowledge creation, circulation, and use, let's say. And the Council has been extremely reactive, and also stakeholders have been extremely reactive to this package. And there have been Council conclusions organized under the German presidency, which by and large confirmed the new objectives and also added a number of actions and priorities. So what you can see here in this slide is the proposal of the Commission, but these parts of this proposal have been confirmed in the political process. So you can see, if we take it from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, you see here the full intervention logic of the new European research area, from what is needed on how to structure our objectives, which actions we want to have, and which impact we expect to receive. And you see that on the what is needed, the challenges faced for research and innovation are, of course, the challenges of our society, which are the needs for the twin transitions, digital and green, but also the need for recovery and resilience from this pandemic, of course, needless to say. And then, of course, some more specific needs which were linked to making sure that we reap the benefits of research also for the economy and the society, but also look at our research and innovation system on how to improve it. So this was the rationale. And therefore, now we have 4 objectives. The first one is dedicated on investments and reforms. The second on access to excellence. The third on links between research and the economy. And the fourth dedicated on research, on the research innovation system itself. Let me just spend a little bit more time on that. So investment, the investment in research innovation is not new. What is new in this debate is 2 things. First of all, specific sub-targets. So we reaffirmed the 3% of GDP. However, we added, we proposed, and this was confirmed by member states, a sub-target on 1.25 public efforts for research innovation as well. The second novelty is linked to the method. And there is a lot of debate, and this is everywhere across all different policies, not least in the recovery and resilience talk that we hear on the news today. We need reforms. We need reforms. So investment liquidity is not the single factor for success if the system is not well organized in order to actually profit from the benefits and be able to spend the money. That's the best way in order to reach out to the user base and make sure that we actually profit from those investments. And that's why reforms are so important. And how do we proceed with reforms? So what is currently being discussed in the context of ERA is by exchanging best practices, joining forces European national level, deciding on strategic priorities, and trying to move together, to make progress together, let's say, of course, with all the respects to competencies and autonomy and so on. So this is the novelty, and let's see what comes out of it. On improving access to excellence, this is about the level playing field across Europe. north, south, east, west. So this is still, of course, on the agenda. And here we have a number of tools ranging from funding, but also to policy tools, such as the policy support facility to facilitate this access to excellence. On the third objective, linking research to the economy, we have again at least 3 elements: the framework conditions, how we can improve the framework conditions, how we can deploy a toolbox to actually facilitate this. And here there is a lot of talk about industrial roadmaps. And yesterday the Commission adopted the new industrial package, and I invite you to have a look and see all the talk about ecosystems and all the tools that we put in place there. And finally, the ecosystem in general. Regarding the last objective, deepening the era, this is a traditional research objective. It focuses on strengthening the research innovation system. So this is where you find all actions related to the research actors. And I'll come back in the next 2 slides. The other novelty, of course, is the new governance with the Pact for Research and Innovation, the new Forum for Transition, ERA Forum for Transition, bringing the Commission and Member States together in order to supervise the rolling out of ERA. And if we can go to the next 2 slides, we see now the set of 14 actions that accompanied the Commission's proposals, and which are grouped per main objective. So actions 1 or 2 are about investments and reforms. I already talked you through that. Actions 3 and 4 are about improving access to excellence, and targets that we can put in place in order to lift all member states to similar levels of intensity. The next 3 actions are dedicated on the links with the economy. So it's about the development of industrial technology roadmaps. It's about working at ecosystem level, so the bottom up, and also the framework conditions, in particular, how we address IP, knowledge valorization, and creating value from knowledge in general. And finally, in the next slide, you can see the next 7 actions, which are dedicated on how we can improve the research innovation system. And here you can see the traditional themes of ERA: research careers, open access, open science, research and technology infrastructures, universities, Action 11, gender equality, citizen science, and finally the Pact for Research Innovation. And to this we have to add something which is no longer an action, but it's something cross-cutting, which is international cooperation. And actually the week after, the Commission will adopt a communication on the global approach communication, complementing this strategy. Now, if we can go to the last, so now this brings me to the last part of my presentation. So to the next, in the next slide, what next with the Charter and Code and human resources strategy for researchers. So currently, ERAC, the European Research Area Committee, is extremely busy in analyzing the scope of the Charter and Code, the values and principles, with respect to the needs of the sector. And it will come as no surprise, of course, that a document which was adopted more than 15 years ago may need to be adapted to the current reality. And that's why there is a dedicated task force from the Council looking at what more is needed there. And at the same time, the Portuguese presidency is busy organizing conclusions, Council conclusions on research careers, addressing all the many diverse facets of researchers, from researcher mobility and flows to an observatory, a structured observatory to understand these flows, to the specific employment conditions and skills, as well as synergies with education and the link with European universities, as mentioned by Céline, as a testbed, and actually to promote certain new concepts there. And then if we can go to the next slide, please, Michele. So also on the Commission, of course, we support and shadow this process through a very increased collaboration with the Council, member states, and also stakeholders. And we are supported by a number of studies. One study is strictly dedicated on the Charter and Code Human Resources Strategy and EURAccess. So we look at the assessment of those instruments and tools from the previous era, and we will prepare recommendations about the way forward and how this can evolve in the future. And we have already had some preliminary background documents. We had workshops on this, and what comes out of it is the following. The Charter and Code, of course, should evolve into an act that supports research careers and addresses the current challenges, be that within academia, but especially beyond academia. Within academia, we know the big question marks, the reform of the research assessment system, career diversification, tenure track systems. Beyond academia, what incentives are there to recruit early career researchers, to recognize PhDs also beyond academia, also beyond an academic career, how academia and business can actually improve their permeability and interoperability. And therefore, the human resources strategy for researchers is likely to adapt to this new reality, which is currently evolving. So these are the current discussions. And finally, EURAccess, the current discussion on EURAccess is that it could evolve into an ERA talent platform, and this is in fact a pilot project identified by the German presidency, because EURAccess is also considered as a success story, but at the same time it is a very big and diverse network, which needs to focus on the challenges, on tackling the challenges of the new era, and at the same time it should be given the tools and resources to do that. And so this concerns the governance, the network, the services, but also the portal and how the portal evolves into a marketplace. So all these are parts of the discussions that we have, and of course European universities are certainly at the center of the attention as a test bed, and so is the vision towards the future of higher education and how it can be empowered to address the challenges more broadly. So hopefully, let's say in the coming 2 years, we should be able to put all the pieces of the equation together into some more meaningful proposals on how these parts plug in together, although we see already today from the discussions and the presentations some possible links. And I think this brings me to the end of my presentation. And thank you very much for your attention.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So Apostolia, we really thank you for this broad overview of the state of the play and of the future possible perspective and development of this process. So I'm sure there will be a lot of questions about of details from the further session of the discussion of our meeting. So I thank in advance you for accepting these also the questions, you and also the colleague Michele Rosa for the further session. And now let's move to the further session of the meeting, of the webinar. So let's start with an exchange of experiences of this process, of the implementation of this process within our respective institutions. So I think it's also useful for you to hear which are the strengths, the advantages, and also the weaknesses that we found out, or the possible obstacles that we found out in our implementation of the process. So I give the floor now to the Director of